It's time for another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. I am John Schmeelk. Happy to be rejoined on the program by friend of the program, New York legend, Kenny Albert. Kenny, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm great, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. Kenny is the call of Giants and the Commanders on Fox at 1 p.m. on Sunday. And Kenny, you had the Giants a few weeks ago when they took on the Lions here. Can you believe that we're in week 15 already, by the way? I mean, it's kind of bizarre that we're kind of here already, no?
It really is hard to believe. Every year, the season seems to go quicker and quicker, and I feel like our crew we're just in Atlanta for week one against Tampa Bay,
Right?
and since then we've been to London, we've been to Madrid, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind this season. But here we are in week 15.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you have a lot going on with your travel. I want to get into that because I just think it's fun for all the New York sport fans out there to kind of see how you're managing all this type of stuff. But you had the Giants against the Lions a few weeks ago, a little bit of a different Giants team at that point because you had Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback, not Jaxson Dart. But what was your general impression from talking to everybody here heading into that Lions game and calling that Giants-Lions game a few weeks ago?
Well, that was game two under Mike Kafka, so that was our first opportunity to speak with him. It was Jameis Winston at quarterback, like you said. It was a fun game. The Giants obviously had the lead in the fourth quarter and a couple of trick plays, right? The touchdown pass to Jameis, and the other trick play earlier involving Olszewski. So for us, it was a fun game to call. We've actually worked 3 Lions home games this year, 4 Lions games overall. They've actually won all 4, but that was the closest of the 3 home games, a couple of blowouts earlier. So the crowd's always great there. It's a fun atmosphere. So that was certainly one of the more memorable games that our crew has worked all season.
What was your impression talking to Kafka coming off that first game and just kind of the vibes you got from him in terms of how he was approaching the head coaching position?
Right. He was real positive heading into the game. I remember calling some of his games as a player. I was doing the Eagles preseason back in, that 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12 era. So I remember him coming in the second half in several of those preseason games. I remember talking to Andy Reid about him. Obviously he was a smart guy, having gone to Northwestern, very cerebral, got into coaching pretty quickly after the playing career was over. And, you could tell when talking to him, Coach Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern saw something in him pretty quickly and hired him as a graduate assistant. And then it was on to the NFL with Andy Reid, and the rest is history. But, interesting side note, I'm looking forward to asking Marcus Mariota what he remembers about Mike Kafka from their short time together with Tennessee back in the 2015 season.
Wow, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. That's a good point. Are you excited to see Dart after getting the Jameis Winston experience, which, by the way, is always entertaining, and he actually played really well in that game. But are you excited to kind of get your first taste of Jaxson Dart?
I am. I've been following from afar this year, haven't seen him play in person, but really looking forward to calling the game on Sunday with Jaxson starting at quarterback. Looking forward to chatting with him. He's obviously been a big story in New York this year. Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Jameis Winston. Called so many of his games through the years with Tampa Bay and then New Orleans, and he played really well that day in Detroit. And I thought he did an excellent job on the Fox pregame show the other day. I was in my hotel room in Arizona getting ready for the late game between the Rams and Cardinals, and he was on the early show, the Fox NFL kickoff show, and then the Fox NFL Sunday shows. And I know he did some work during Super Bowl week as well with Fox. So I think, if he wants to move into that second career, whenever his playing career is done, he certainly has a head start.
Yeah, and he certainly has the charisma for it. When you guys talked to Dart this week, and you and Jonathan Vilma get these guys on conference calls heading into the game, what are some of the things you want to talk to him about and think some of the big stories are with him heading into the final 4 games of his rookie year?
It's usually a combination when we talk to the players. A lot of it is obviously about the game and the season, but we also try to get some personal stories, about their upbringing, about who their favorite quarterbacks, who their favorite players were growing up. So it's a bit of a combination. We try to get some of those personal anecdotes out on the air as well, because you don't want it to be all about the X's and O's.
No, absolutely right. No question. What was your feel from 3 weeks ago about how this Giants team is kind of fighting through such a rough year, the coaching change? I mean, you could tell by how they played against the Lions that they're still into it. Obviously, their last game before the bye against the Patriots did not go quite as well. But do you sense this team is still kind of locked in and ready to go and playing hard going into their Final Four?
That Detroit game, they certainly were. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a blowout, just based on the trajectory of both teams this season. But I was impressed. The defense played hard. We saw what the offense was able to do with the trick plays. They kind of caught the Lions off guard. They gave them a taste of their own medicine. It's usually Detroit, especially during the Ben Johnson era as offensive coordinator. But even this year, we've seen some of those trick plays from the Lions. But they gave them a taste of their own medicine in that game. And certainly that game, it certainly looked like they were playing hard on in all three phases. The New England game obviously went in the other direction, and now they've had to buy, a little bit of a stretch to get away for many of the players and take their minds off it. It's been a tough season, obviously, but these divisional matchups, I've worked so many Giants, Washington games through the years, and you could throw out the records. It really doesn't matter. It's a divisional game, NFC East, December weather, so they're always a lot of fun.
You partner with Jonathan Vilma on these games. Curious, we saw at the end of that Lions game that Jahmyr Gibbs had those two big runs that really, tilted the games towards the Lions, helped them win the game. The Giants' rush defense all year, Kenny, has just been bad. It has not been good. So what is Vilma's take on kind of why the rush defense and the defense overall has struggled, and just what are some of the things they need to do to kind of improve that?
Well, when I'm trying to think back to that game, I know he pointed out that Dexter Lawrence was on the sideline prior to that play.
Yep.
So Vilma picked up on that right away. Not to put words in his mouth, but I know in our conversations about the team, it's obviously been a down year for some of the players compared to what we've seen in the past. Obviously, a huge bright spot is Brian Burns and what he's done this year. There have been some injuries as well. So, again, talked a little bit to Vilma this week. We had a crew Zoom call yesterday, and we'll talk more over these next couple of days and get a better idea for what he's thinking. But I know he did pick up on the fact, like I said, that whether it was injury related or not, Dexter wasn't on the field for that play, and Gibbs obviously did what he did.
Yeah, and Gibbs does that to a lot of teams too, by the way.
He certainly does.
One of the best running backs in the league. How many times have you seen the Commanders this year?
Saw them twice. We had them in Madrid against Miami, and then we had them the next week against Detroit. The first game went to overtime, the game in Madrid. Both teams had chances to kick field goals to put them ahead in the final minutes, and both went for it on fourth down, so it wound up going into overtime. And then the Commanders had an unfortunate turnover right at the start of overtime, and Miami had a short field. And then the game against Detroit the next week, Lions, did what we're used to see them doing. So, but it was a close game for a while. So we saw them in the two games back to back.
Huddle up, get in here. If you're lined up here, you gotta go over the middle with it to score.
Right. How do we make that happen?
I don't know, but Citizens does. Make sense of your money with Citizens, official bank of Eli Manning.
Giants Huddle podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day celebrations to your everyday financial needs, Big Blue fans can get the most out of every moment with Citizens. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. It's funny, Kenny. Obviously, it's a step back going from Jaden Daniels to Marcus Mariota. Jaden Daniels, when he plays, is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. But the offense with Mariota has really still been effective. They've done a really nice job moving and scoring the ball, and it's almost been a bit of a resurgence for Mariota's career after it kind of did not work out for him in Atlanta.
He's had some nice games this season, and I remember in talking to the opponents prior to the games against Miami and Detroit, although they acknowledged, how great Jaden Daniels played last season, tremendous rookie year, they felt that, there wasn't that much of a drop-off as far as what they had to concentrate on defensively, going from Daniels to Mariota. He's a veteran. He's smart. He's been around the league. So those teams certainly weren't taking Mariota lightly. Came in as a Heisman Trophy winner, top pick, and like you said, moved on to Atlanta, and things didn't work out, that great for him there as far as getting a lot of playing time. And here he is sort of taking advantage of the second opportunity in Washington, has started a number of games this year, and he's one of three Heisman Trophy winners. The Heisman award show this weekend, there are three of them on these rosters. We have Jameis and Mariota, and obviously Daniels won't be in uniform, but you have three Heisman Trophy winners on the rosters of these two teams on Sunday.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And much like the Giants, the Commanders' big issue, Kenny, has been on defense. With Dan Quinn as their head coach, they, had a lot of takeaways last year that hasn't quite come together this season, and it's just been a real struggle for them defensively. They can't seem to figure things out.
Yeah, it has been. Injuries have certainly played a part as well, but you can say that about every team. But remember, this is a team that played in the NFC Championship game last year. They beat Detroit in the divisional round and go to the championship game. And obviously the Daniels injury has been a huge part of it this season. He was on such a roll last year, but you're right. They haven't been able to take the ball away on the defensive side. Somewhat similar to the Giants. Some of their key players haven't put up the performances, as they did last year. And, it's come crumbling down a bit this year in Washington. But the Daniels injury is certainly a major factor. They were also without Terry McLaurin for a number of games. Now they've lost Zach Ertz. So it's been a bit of a rough year in Washington, especially compared to last season.
Quinn does a good job of being enthusiastic and keeping things positive. Do you still think overall the vibes down there are positive in terms of their long-term future outlook?
And he's a Jersey guy. He grew up in Morristown. He coached at Hofstra, so he has a lot of local ties. He's such a positive guy. And I think if you get a healthy Jaden Daniels back next season, it's a whole different story. He was the main reason, along with the defense, that they went so far in the playoffs last year. First playoff win in close to 2 decades, and first trip to a championship game since the 1990s. So if Daniels can bounce back, he's had the elbow injuries, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, and then the relapse this week. So I think they could certainly bounce back with a healthy Jaden Daniels.
I know you get more crossover games now with the AFC, but I'll stick with the NFC because that's where most of your games come from, obviously working for Fox. Do you think the Rams right now are the team to beat in the NFC based on what you've seen?
They're certainly up there, I would say, in the top 3. We've had them a number of times. We had them last week against Arizona. Matthew Stafford's playing at an MVP type level. I think Stafford and Drake May are probably the top 2 candidates at this point. When you look at what Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, the running backs, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum had a career game last week. So the offensive line is playing great. I think they've allowed the 3rd fewest sacks. It was 17 going into the game last week. So the offense has been terrific. And then defensively, when you look at some of the young players they have there with Byron Young and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and right on down the line, Chris Shula is an up-and-coming coach. He's been the coordinator for a couple of years. He's the grandson of the Hall of Famer Don Shula, and he and Sean McVay go back to college together. And Sean McVay actually used to go with him during spring break to Don Shula's house in Florida. And Sean McVay would pick Don Shula's brain, during his collegiate days because he was with Chris Shula. They became good friends. He's in his 2nd season as a coordinator. So the Rams are certainly on a roll. But, you look at that division. Seattle also has 10 wins. The Rams have 10 wins. San Francisco has 9 wins. So they're not even guaranteed of winning a division at this point. But and they have a couple of division games down the stretch. But they've been really impressive in the games that we've done involving the Rams.
Yeah, and the Rams still have a game against Seattle. They beat them in that matchup earlier when they really kind of threw Sam Darnold for a bit of a loop. But the Rams still have to face the Lions. They have the Cardinals again. So, yeah, they have some tough games coming up. We'll see what happens. Who do you think their biggest competition is? You mentioned the other teams in the West. Out of the teams in the North and the East, what other teams do you think could make the biggest run here in the NFC?
You look at the North with that's a huge game, the Lions and Rams this weekend, because the Lions certainly aren't guaranteed a playoff spot. If they can win the game this week, that would be huge for Detroit.
Which is crazy, by the way, because I think they are one of the best teams in the conference.
Yeah, I agree. But they've lost a couple that they wouldn't have lost last year. You look at what Green Bay's doing. That tie could really come into play with the final standings when the regular season comes to an end. And Chicago, probably the surprise team in the NFC under Ben Johnson. So you have 3 potential playoff teams in the North, 3 potential playoff teams in the West. You'll probably only have 1 get in from the South, and you have to put Carolina up there with Chicago among the surprise teams for sure. But like I said, I've seen 4 Detroit games; they've won all of them. So we've probably seen them more than any other NFC team. We had Chicago once. They were blown out by Detroit week 2 in the game that we had. We had the Packers once out in Arizona. Haven't seen Seattle or San Fran in person. So it'll be a great race down the stretch in all the divisions. You have Dallas still with a chance, Philly coming off the loss. So should be some great races over the last 4 weeks.
Have you done any Philly games yet this year?
Not this year. We haven't done Philly this year.
So it's on the outside looking in, but this feels an awful lot like 2023, right? With the way this is kind of going, where they started so hot, they were winning a bunch of close games. I think the last 4 games for Philly will be very, very interesting because I could see it swinging wildly in either direction.
Yeah, you're right. It does feel a lot like the 23 season. And, at one point it looked like Dallas was dead, and now they've come up with a couple of big wins. So, it'll be fascinating to watch the NFC East down the stretch as well. You have teams looking to play spoiler all around the conference and all around the league. So, this is such a fun time heading into week 15.
And then it's crazy in the AFC, Kenny. I know you don't do a ton of the games, but you looked at all the teams heading into the year. You talk about Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Oh, they're super quarterbacks. Burrow and the Bengals. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Mahomes and the Chiefs. A lot of those teams aren't even going to make the playoffs. Justin Herbert's running for his life with his 2 offensive tackles hurt. Josh Allen's the only one that has his team securely in right now. It's just been such a topsy-turvy AFC this year with teams that no one expected sitting atop their divisions.
No, it really has been. I think going into the season, when you looked at the AFC, Buffalo, Baltimore, Cincinnati, like you said,
Chiefs.
And the Chiefs were probably the top 4 in a lot of people's minds. And 3 of them probably underperforming, but that's why they play the games. It's the best reality TV, and we'll see how it plays out down the stretch. We threw out a note in our Rams game the other day, and I'm not sure if it changed last week. I'd have to go check the numbers. I haven't looked yet, but I said to Jonathan Vilma on the air, if I told you that the 3 highest yardage games from a quarterback this season, up until week 13, so heading into week 14, the 3 quarterbacks with the biggest games as far as passing yards were Joe Flacco 1, Jacoby Brissett 2, Russell Wilson 3. What would you have said? And that's a fact. It was those 3 quarterbacks, Flacco, Brissett, Wilson, had the 3 highest yardage games heading into week 14. So you just never know.
And that's why the NFL is the best sport going out there. All right, let's bring it back to this game very quickly, Kenny. How do you think this game's going to go? What's your feel? Do you think we could be in for a shootout here? We might get a little snow on Sunday too, which might give a little atmosphere. I feel like this could be a bit of an up and down game.
It sounds like there could be a little weather, cold, maybe a little snow. Was it 2 years ago we were working the game, the tie game, Giants and Commanders?
That's right. Yeah.
2 seasons ago. So, who knows? Our crew's had a bunch of overtime games this year, but I could see it being a high scoring game, with the way both defenses have been this year. And, I would assume if it's a weather game, we'll see a lot of, both teams running the ball. But, yeah, I could see it. And I'm usually wrong with my predictions, so who knows? But
same here.
Yeah, I could see it being somewhere in the high 20s, low 30s, as far as the final score.
If you want to know how to manage 2 minutes of crunch time football, I'm your man. But if you're wondering about a long-term financial plan, you should talk to Citizens. Hey, I can also talk lawn care.
I'd like to learn about a mowing routine.
Yes, I knew I could help. Make sense of your money with Citizens.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, and now Giants long-term here, Kenny. This isn't your purview, I get it. But as someone that's around New York, you talk to Giant fans, you have a feel for what's going on. What do you think just some of the priorities are going to be when they kind of do their head coaching search in the offseason? When they think about the type of candidates that they're going to consider and guys that could be the best fit for kind of taking over and finally trying to get this franchise back on the right path.
Right. And I know we've all seen a lot of the names that have been thrown out there and, certainly living in the area and following the league as closely as I do, I'm certainly well aware of the cycle at the head coaching position that's gone on with the Giants franchise over the last decade. But, depending on how they perform over the last 4 weeks, does Mike Kafka have a shot? He's, a great offensive mind. You look at the success he's had, especially in Kansas City, working with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And does he get the opportunity to work with Jaxson Dart moving forward? We'll see. I know Chris Shula, who I mentioned a few minutes ago, his name's been out there in the newspapers, online over the last couple of days. I'm real impressed with what he's done in Los Angeles, and he comes from that Sean McVay tree, which has had great success. You look at all the coaches that have worked under McVay, before that under Mike Shanahan, with Kyle Shanahan, they were all together in Washington, with the Commanders, the Redskins at the time. Mike Shanahan was the head coach, and then you had Kyle Shanahan, you had Sean McVay, you had Matt LaFleur, you had Kevin O'Connell. All those guys were on that Washington staff. So it's a pretty good track record. So when I read Chris Shula's name the other day, I said to myself, boy, that could certainly be an intriguing possibility as well. But, I'm sure there are a number of other names on their list. And again, we'll see how it plays out over the next 4 weeks. If they win 2 or 3 of these games and Dart has great success, then I'm sure Mike Kafka will be, right at the top of the list as well. So, that's for people a lot higher up than you and I in the food chain, John, but we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I think Mike McDaniel, too, another coach that was on that staff in Washington, too, if I remember correctly, right?
He was at one point, and he and Dan Quinn also worked together in Miami. So you have all kinds of these. When we did that Washington-Miami game, we talked about their history together. So it's always fun looking back at, who worked where with whom. Dan Quinn, speaking of the Commanders this week, he and Raheem Morris were together at Hofstra when Raheem was a player.
Really? I didn't know that.
Dan was a coach in that staff, and the Jets were practicing there still, at Hofstra at the time, and Herm Edwards was coaching the Jets, and there was a lot of crossover with the Jets and Hofstra, and they gave Raheem Morris an internship with the Jets in 2001, and he was in the DB room, and Aaron Glenn was one of the players at the time. So when we did the so many coaches are moving around, it's hard to keep track. But when we did the Jets Atlanta game a couple of weeks ago, we talked about it with Raheem and Aaron Glenn, the fact that they were together, one as an intern, one as a player. And then Herm Edwards winds up recommending Raheem Morris to Tampa, and he goes down there and wins a Super Bowl as a quality control coach in his first year with the Buccaneers. But for Raheem Morris and Dan Quinn, it all started at Hofstra back in the early 2000s.
And then Raheem would overlap with McVay, going back to what you're talking about before. So all these coaching things are all intertwined.
Right, Raheem worked for McVay with the Rams, and they won a Super Bowl together.
Absolutely right. All right, so Kenny, obviously besides the stuff you do for Fox, you're doing the Rangers on TV for MSG. You got some TNT stuff going on. Give fans an idea of which is now the busiest time of year for you, kind of November, December is like for you, and even October, trying to balance your 2 sports and kind of what your travel looks like each week, because I always find this stuff fascinating.
Well, right now, as we speak on Thursday, I'm actually home for a week, believe it or not, because of the Giants assignment on Sunday, and the Rangers are off today. They're off tomorrow. They play at home Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday. So actually home for a week, which is very unusual this time of the year. I'll take you back about a month ago, 3 to 4 weeks ago. Woke up in Madrid on a Monday morning following that Commanders-Dolphins game. Flew to Vegas via Chicago. So It was a 9-hour flight from Madrid to Chicago and then 4 hours to Vegas. Had a Rangers game in Vegas on Tuesday. Took a red eye to Washington, D.C. for a TNT NHL telecast. Went back to Denver for a Rangers game on Thursday, and then went to Detroit on Friday to start the prep for the Lions-Giants game that weekend. So that week was very unusual. It's not that sort of an aberration, but woke up in Madrid on Monday, Vegas that night and Tuesday, and then Washington, Denver, Detroit. So that was a 5-day stretch in November.
And those are, I'm trying to count them ahead, 4 or 5 different time zones. That's pretty good. You got Pacific, Central, Madrid, New York, right? You got 4 different time zones.
I think I had every time zone in the U.S., right? Because Central time zone, Chicago on the layover. Denver is in the Mountain time zone.
That's right. You got all
Pacific time zone. So yeah, I had every time zone that week plus Madrid. So that was, usually it's not as crazy as that, but between football, the Rangers, and TNT, it is a jigsaw puzzle of a schedule this time of year.
Now, you're doing TV now for the Rangers. Do you miss the differences between TV and radio? Because obviously, for people that don't know, the call of a game on TV and radio is so different. On radio, you really have to tell people what's happening. On TV, they're seeing what's happening, and you're providing a little bit more insight into what's happening. So do you miss some of the differences between the radio call and the TV call?
Yeah, it's a great question because there are differences. And on radio, you are describing everything that goes on. You're giving the score and time a lot more often because on TV, the viewers can see it. They could see what's happening. I was so fortunate to work 29 years on the radio side with the Rangers and so excited to switch over to the TV side this year as well after Sam Rosen retired, the great Hall of Famer. And I got to bring my partner with me because Joe Micheletti retired as well. So Dave Maloney and I, we thought we were done as far as working together after 20 years on the radio. And then Joe retired after the season, and Dave's on the TV side as well, doing a great job along with Brian Boyle. So, yeah, there are probably certain elements of radio you miss because it really brings you back to the fundamentals of starting out. For me, calling minor league hockey games back in the early 90s in Baltimore. But TV has been a lot of fun as well. And looking forward to this stretch coming up of the 3 home games for the Rangers in 4 days with a Giants-Commanders game right smack in the middle.
I've never called hockey before. I've done the other sports. What are the mechanical differences for you? And maybe the different challenges between play-by-play hockey versus play-by-play football?
People ask me all the time, and I've been lucky enough to be heavily involved in all 4, right? Football, hockey, and then basketball and baseball as well. To me, hockey's the easiest because you're just calling the game. The puck's in action for 60 minutes. Yes, you're talking less on TV than radio, but you're calling the play. Similar to basketball, which is slower, there are more whistles, but it's 48 minutes of continuous action. Football is the most rhythmic. It's one play, and then it's 20 or 25 seconds. So you set up the play, you call the play, your color analyst comes in, and then you recap the play. Baseball to me was always the most challenging. I usually did and still do about anywhere between 8 and 12 games a year. Back in the day, it might have been a little more with Fox. But because of the downtime, between the pitches, between the batters, which has gotten a lot better with the implementation of the pitch clock. I think that's really helped out broadcasters because there is not as much downtime. But for me, just coming in once in a while doing baseball, that was always the most challenging. I've also had the opportunity to work some other sports, some boxing through the years, which is a lot different. There's no ball, there's no puck. And what I learned is you want to use a lot of your best information early on because it could end. There could be a knockout in the first or second round. So you don't want to leave your great nuggets on the cutting room floor. I've also worked some volleyball and water polo and track and field at the Olympics. So those were challenging, but they were a lot of fun to learn a new sport, learn about the rules, the history, the strategy. But of the 4 major sports, hockey to me is almost like riding a bike. I've done it for 35 years now, and you're basically calling the play and then working in some anecdotes and stats and obviously leading your color analyst into things. But football is definitely the most rhythmic. It's the one play, 20 or 25 seconds. Another play, 20 or 25 seconds. And, obviously there are replays and graphics and other elements involved. And we have a tremendous crew with our producer, Fran Morrison, director, Matt Gangle, Jonathan Vilma. Megan O'Leary is our sideline reporter who lives in Vegas now, but she grew up in Eastern Pennsylvania, went to Seton Hall. So it's somewhat of a home game for Megan this week as well.
Very good. And I know you've done TV, so it's not like he was like telling you how to do the job. But we all know what a good dude Sam Rosen is, and not just like one of the best guys in the industry, like one of the best guys on the planet. Like Sam Rosen's just terrific. What was it like kind of getting that torch from him and then taking over the legacy that he had kind of built as the Rangers play-by-play guy on TV?
No, you're right. Sam's one of the best people you'll ever meet. Hall of Fame broadcaster, still involved. The Rangers have the Centennial Nights this season for their 100th anniversary. So he'll be there this Saturday, emceeing the on-ice ceremony.
Nice. Good.
But we've all been part of the group. I would sit next to Sam on the plane for 29 years. We were all together. It started as Sal Messina was my partner, and then you had Sam and John Davidson on the TV side. And then on radio, I had Brian Mullen for a couple of years, Dave Maloney for the last 20. Joe Micheletti replaced JD on TV in 2006. So we're all a family, all part of the same traveling party, countless flights, meals together. So, sliding over into the TV booth, not much changed, as far as the schedule, the travel, or the prep, because I was with the Rangers for 29 years. It's just a little bit different, like you described, doing it on the TV side instead of the radio side.
Kenny, this was awesome. It's always fun to catch up with you, man. Enjoy the rest of the year. Have good luck and safe travels with all your hockey stuff, and we'll see you on Sunday afternoon.
John, really appreciate it. Always enjoy listening and watching your work. And guess what? We'll see you again next week for the Vikings.
Oh, you got us 2 weeks in a row. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
2 in a row.
Wow, so you don't have to travel 2 weeks in a row for Fox, man. I imagine the phone call you at the place just had to get that happen. That's pretty good.
Well, sometimes, like you said, sometimes the weeks are crazy, and once in a while you get to stay home. So at least on the football side for the next 2 weeks, I'll be close to home.
Oh, that's awesome. Kenny, thanks for the time, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
That's the Giants Huddle Podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. We'll see you next time, everybody.